So, we are continuing our conversation on Vancouver Canucks trade targets, and today we're diving into a name that has been discussed at various lengths on different shows, on different articles. This was talked about on Canucks Conversation. This was also written about on Canucks Army and Daily Hive. It's been one of the more talked about names in the Vancouver beat. People are making posts about it, people are making YouTube videos about it. Let's talk about it here in this commentary because I wanted to talk about a guy that I personally have been a very big fan of ever since his draft season in 2019-20. Today we're heading over to the Minnesota Wild and talking about Marco Rossi. Because when you think about Vancouver centers, you talk about the Petterssons, the Suters, formerly the Millers and the Horvats. Vancouver is in a vulnerable spot with their center core right now. You can't necessarily fully pencil in Filipino as a 2C. Sure, he could be healthy enough to play, but you don't know if he's good enough. And also sure, you can think that he is good enough, but he might not be healthy enough to play. It is a mixed bag with Filipino. P.S. Suter, we don't know if he's coming back. That remains to be seen. So Elias Pettersson is the only guy that we can pencil in as a quote-unquote top 6 center on this team. Unless, of course, you wanted to give that to Teddy Bluger, which I don't think anybody would prefer, which is why we talk about center targets and guys that the Vancouver Canucks could bring in to be that second-line center. And Marco Rossi of the Minnesota Wild is a guy that would fit the bill as a talent piece. He's 23 years old, 5'9", 183, a left-handed guy drafted by the Wild in the 9th overall spot at the 2020 NHL Entry Draft. Now, part of the reason I loved Rossi was because this guy was the best CHL point producer that year. He wasn't the highest drafted CHL player. That honor in that season belonged to Alexis Lafreniere, who went first overall, and we all know the story there. It was quite a hot topic in the NHL. But Marco Rossi had the most points out of anybody in the CHL that year, 120 points, 39 goals, 81 assists in 56 games played. He was a stud, and eventually, after battling long COVID and only playing 5 hockey games in the year of 2020-2021, he bounced back and became a near point-per-game guy in the AHL the very next season after almost dying. Yeah, I know a lot of people like to downplay the effects of some of this stuff, but Marco Rossi's bout with long COVID was really, really bad, and it was compiled with myocarditis that also affected him. He almost died. So now, he's back. He's still better than ever. Was able to find himself a point-per-game year in the Iowa Wild system before posting up 40 and then 60 points with the Minnesota Wild the next 2 years. Marco Rossi is 23 years old and coming off of a 60-point, 24-goal campaign with Minnesota. He had 3 points in 6 games in the playoffs as the Wild got bounced in the first round, and Marco Rossi is a total gamer. He is skilled, he can make plays, he's very smart. The way he moves around and he creates offense despite only being 5'9", 183, this is a pure skill guy. And it's why he was able to light the OHL on fire in his draft-eligible year, lighting the CHL on fire, really, because his hockey smarts are just so above and beyond exceptional, and it helped him get that 60-point campaign at the NHL level this year. The problem is, the Minnesota Wild don't seem to be too keen on Marco Rossi, and there have been a number of people speaking out and writing about this or talking about it on shows. Cam Robinson went out there and spoke out on Canucks Conversation, saying that Marco Rossi is a gamer. He's the first one in the rink and the last one out. He is a true pros pro. He says in the video here, which will be linked in the description, that Marco might not necessarily be a good fit with Vancouver because he is a little bit smaller, but if you want skill, you want a guy that can make some really nice plays, this is a really good option. Robinson even says, though, in this clip that Minnesota doesn't really seem to be too enamored with Rossi purely because of his size. And it's kind of unfortunate because it's like, hey, if the guy is talented, if the guy can score, if the guy has proven results, then who cares if he's only 5'9"? Well, it turns out, potentially the Minnesota Wild care. If you're Vancouver, though, and you've built this team with a D core that consisted of Zadorov and Myers and Desharnais and Soucy, and you have placed an emphasis on gathering size guys, maybe Marco Rossi isn't really up your alley. But then again, you think about it like, hey, there's already one smaller dude in Vancouver that really bolstered up the offense, and you can talk about Quinn Hughes in that way, but I'm thinking more so of a Connor Garland on forward. He's also small. I'm not going to say that they play the same style of game. I think Marco is a lot more possession-based and skill-based. Garland is a lot more straight-line aggression, speed, and spins. But these guys are of a similar frame, and whether or not you think that puts any stock into Rossi's capability in Vancouver, should he be traded here, obviously that does make things interesting. Rossi, his contract is expiring at the end of this season, and there has not been an extension. If we dive into why that is, seems like Minnesota doesn't really like the guy. Let's head over to an article on dailyhive.com published by Noah Strang, which does go out there and describe what's happening. The Rossi and Wild camps seem to be going through a rocky stretch. Despite impressive scoring numbers, it appears that the Wild don't view the Austrian player as a key piece of their future and would consider trading him this summer. He was relegated to the 4th line in the playoffs and ranked 11th in average ice time amongst Wild forwards. Despite his reduced role, Rossi scored twice in the postseason, and he met with coach John Hayes to discuss his demotion, but was never elevated in the lineup. There's a clear disconnect between the Wild and Rossi, whether it's based on his playstyle or his diminutive height. The Wild aren't giving him the typical opportunities most budding stars get. I have no doubt I am for sure a top 6 guy, Rossi said at his year-end exit interview. Now, for what it's worth, AFP Analytics does project Rossi getting either $4.5 million for 2 years or $7.39 for 7 years on his next deal. This article by Daily Hive says that the Canucks can fit those contracts into their salary cap picture. And this is why I think financially, it makes a lot of sense for Vancouver to target a guy like Marco Rossi, especially if he is not in high favor on his own team. The Minnesota Wild were struggling pretty heavily with injuries throughout the entire year, which elevated guys like Rossi and Boldy into higher spots in the lineup, and it allowed them a grander stage to showcase what they're worth. It's kind of like Pius Suter in a way. Pius was able to take advantage of Elias Pettersson and Miller not being there, and he was able to be a top-line center because of it. Now, Marco Rossi is a lot younger than Pius Suter, so I think there is more upward potential for growth here, and also Rossi produced 60 points. Suter could not do that. So there is a lot more talent here out of Rossi. He was a top 10 pick in the 2020 draft for a reason. I honestly thought he could have gone as high as number 5 or number 4 had a team just been a little bit more ballsier in drafting a 5'9 guy. But now he's a Wild, and he isn't really in good favor, and there's a chance that he could be on the market. So for Vancouver, I do think this is one of the main teams that can go out there and acquire this dude. It just depends on the price. He'll probably go for a little bit less than you would expect because he is so disregarded, I guess, by the Wild. But I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Minnesota's Marco Rossi being a Vancouver Canucks trade target, and do you think it's destined to be? Could this guy fit in Vancouver? Could he be a proper second-line center? I certainly think so. So does Cam Robinson on that video. But I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.